Hi, my name is Thais Gibson, and I'm the creator of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about jealousy experienced as a dismissive avoidant. So, jealousy is experienced differently by each of the different attachment styles. And jealousy generally is more severe for some attachment styles than others for different reasons, and is experienced to varying degrees. So, jealousy for dismissive avoidance, and I think something that's important to recognize in general about jealousy is that more intense and severe jealousy can actually be a trauma response. It's like this triggered fear of like losing somebody, having somebody betray you. Depending on, anxious jealousy will be connected to the fear of loss or abandonment. A lot of the times for fearful avoidance, jealousy is connected to the fear of betrayal, and a reinforcement that you are in fact unworthy. And for dismissive avoidance, jealousy is often experienced as this recognition that you're depending or relying on somebody else and it's making you weak or vulnerable to them. And that's something that's disliked. Now, jealousy can also be related for dismissive avoidance to this idea that it's like, oh, you're defective. And that's why somebody's flirting with somebody else or interested in somebody else, because at your core, you're not worthy or good enough for them in your defectiveness. And so when these core wounds are activated, those are all essentially minor trauma responses and can even be major trauma responses depending on the severity and intensity of the core wound. So jealousy isn't something where, and I think that historically people tend to look at jealousy this way. It's like, oh, if you're jealous, that's silly, or you're being petty, or you're, being ridiculous, or too clingy, or all these different things. But like the reality is these are real triggers and emotions for people. And so it's important to just recognize that and be gentle to yourself if you're feeling any of this to begin with. Now, as a general rule, jealousy can also to a certain degree represent unmet needs. And the reason this is super interesting to touch on here before I dive into like the DA part of this is that I find generally couples are less jealous, even if they have like a jealous streak in their history, when they're very connected. It's when there's a greater trust and bond in the relationship, when communication is good, when the bond is strong, when they feel like there's a sense of safety because they're connected to one another, they've been attuned to one another, they've been present with each other, they've been spending some quality time together. I see that even things that would normally trigger a jealous response are much more minimized, even without people working on their core wounds and challenges related to jealousy that can be sort of triggering it or a component of what triggers it. So I think that's important to recognize that there is a component of like how solid the relationship is that has an influence on how jealous somebody might become in a situation. Now, DAs in general, dismissive avoidance in general, tend to be the least jealous, at least in their overt expression of jealousy. And it's also important to recognize there's a difference between jealousy and possessiveness. Not that that necessarily relates to a DA particularly, but dismissive avoidance tend to absolutely be the least willing to express, because they feel a lot of the time that expressing that they are jealous, even to themselves, even like letting themselves know that they're jealous, is something that proves that they're needing somebody too much, they're relying on somebody too much, they're too interested, somebody has power over their feelings, and that makes them weak, that makes them vulnerable, that makes them all the things that they're trying so hard to avoid being in the first place. And it's like the antithesis to all of their coping mechanisms. So what we'll often find is that the DA will deny that they're jealous in the relationship to themselves and just be able to shut it down and be like, oh, I don't care about that. Who cares? I don't need that person anyways. And they'll sort of go into coping through that kind of internal dialogue and like trajectory and how they deal with it. And so if there's a denial in the relationship to self, obviously there's an overt denial of the jealousy as well. But what I've also found is that when I really have conversations with clients in the past and say, honestly, were you feeling some sense of jealousy in that situation? They'll often say yes, but I want to allow myself to really feel it or express it. And so this tends to be the experience. And then what we'll see is that dismissive avoidance, if they do feel more hurt by that jealousy and more affected by it, they do tend to then need to shut down and withdraw when they feel jealous, because it's like they're trying to equilibrate from needing somebody. It's like they want to pull back into themselves and deny that they need anybody and sort of push away. to protect themselves and to make themselves feel like, oh, no, I don't really need anybody, I'm fine. And it's this way of coping. It's a subconscious strategy to protect themselves. And sometimes we'll see if a partner, let's say an anxious, preoccupied partner, tries to make the DA feel jealous in a relationship, that often it has sort of a reverse effect where the DA will be like, you're making me uncomfortable. This is hurting me. You have power over my emotions. I don't like feeling this way. So I'm just going to withdraw into myself, pull way back, and even sort of go cold for a few days after. So it can sort of fire off in the wrong direction. And a big part of how jealousy is resolved is through healthy communication, to be able to say, hey, that situation didn't make me feel good. I feel uncomfortable. I feel like I need some form of reassurance, or I have a boundary there around that behavior, depending, of course, on like what the situation is. So we can talk about like resolving jealousy in another series if you guys want to see more of that. And if you want to do a deeper dive into it, let me know in the comments below. But I just want to talk a little bit about in this series how each of the attachment styles experiences jealousy, what it's connected to. So there's some more insight into it, instead of it being this sort of taboo topic at times for people where it's like, oh, you're weak if you're jealous, or whatever it might be. You're the bad, evil boyfriend or girlfriend or partner of any kind if you're jealous, and it's just not the case. So hopefully that makes a whole lot of sense. We have an entire course inside PDS. It's all about rebuilding trust and overcoming jealousy. And we actually talk about reconditioning the trauma response related to jealousy, especially in more intense cases. And I'll put a link in the description box below to the All Access Pass, which allows you access for 7 days for free. So hopefully that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in tomorrow's video.